4 minutes and 17 seconds into the bridge footage, everything changed. On the BRP Teresa Magbanua, the air is thick with humidity and diesel fumes. For the 22 crew members, the South China Sea waves usually mean routine. But at 4:21, a new sound rises. Steady twin, 2,000 horsepower engines closing in. Officers lean toward their radar screens, tracking a green blip with intent. This is no fishing boat. Instead, a white-hulled vessel from Qionghai executes a rare commercial maneuver, a kinetic intercept, where a ship deliberately approaches or blocks another at close range to affect its movement. The impact comes next. Sharp and disturbing, the metallic sound is felt before it is heard. The reinforced steel bow of the Chinese fishing boat cuts into the Magbanua's port side. It tears through the hull. Within seconds, the high-pressure fuel lines in the auxiliary compartment rupture. Fire erupts immediately, fierce and bright. This video racked up 40 million views in less than a day. More than evidence, it was a call to unite allies against a threat. Instead, it captured the moment a 70-year-old alliance began to crack in public. The Philippines called it an act of intentional aggression and invoked its mutual defense treaty with the United States. They waited for Washington. 14 hours later, the American reply finally came. Its silence sent a clear message to China. The United States and its allies watched the same footage but drew different interpretations intentionally. This is more than a story about a boat getting rammed in a contested reef. Rather, it provides an examination of the grammar of crisis, a concept that describes how diplomatic language and word choices can shape international conflicts. In these cases, the presence or absence of a single word can tip the balance between a regional standoff and a global war. To better understand what is at stake, one must look at the wider context behind these events. Such incidents do not occur by chance. Instead, they serve as deliberate signals and form part of a larger strategy of alliance management, a process that requires the coordination and maintenance of relationships between countries. By carefully choosing their words and responses, leaders send strong messages to both adversaries and allies. Examining the decisions made by Washington and Manila reveals not just a confrontation at sea, but also illuminates how states use communication to define the limits of their commitments. It is also a lesson in escalation management within the gray zone, the space between traditional peace and open warfare. To see how a few seconds of video might threaten a treaty from the Truman era, consider the core issue, the Second Thomas Shoal. This spot exists on no modern legal map, and was formally rejected by an international tribunal in 2016. To retain possession of this speck of sand, the Philippines acted desperately in 1999. They took a rusting World War II-era transport ship, the BRP Sierra Madre, and purposefully ran it aground on the reef. For 27 years, a small group of Filipino Marines has called this deteriorating ship home. They spend days and nights in hammocks between rusted walls. Wholly dependent on rainwater and scant supplies that slip through the Chinese blockade, they endure life aboard the ghostly Sierra Madre, an eerie symbol of Philippine control. Salt air eats at the steel hull, accelerating deterioration. Each storm strips away more. If the ship collapses or the Marines leave, the Philippines loses the shoal. China does not need to use force. Waiting suffices, as time and nature are on its side. This underscores Teresa Magbanua's mission. She was not only delivering food, but demonstrating Philippine sovereignty. As the Magbanua neared the shoal, the little blue men awaited. These are members of the Chinese Maritime militia, ostensibly civilian fishing boat crews, yet trained and equipped for paramilitary roles. Officially civilian, these boats are in reality a trained paramilitary force. They have reinforced hulls for collision protection and satellite communications hidden beneath fishing nets. They operate between peace and war. If you use force, you are accused of attacking innocent fishermen. If you show restraint, they might ram, blockade, or set your ship ablaze, later claiming it was a navigational error. The maritime militia is central to China's broader South China Sea strategy, a calibrated method using civilian-looking, government-organized vessels to incrementally advance territorial claims without triggering open conflict. This is known as the cabbage strategy, surrounding contested areas with layers of fishing boats, Coast Guard, and naval ships to intensify pressure. By normalizing militia presence and actions, Beijing shifts control, shapes perceptions, and complicates responses by rivals or outside powers. The Magbanua wasn't confronting just boats, it was confronting a deliberate state push to redraw the map, one incident at a time. After the confrontation, footage of the bridge appeared on social media within 6 hours, and Manila labeled it aggression. In diplomacy, that term directly invokes Article 4 of the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. Armed attacks on one mean attacks on both. Manila called in its marker. We are being attacked, and America is coming. In Washington, State Department and Pentagon officials had signals intelligence that the Chinese captain was acting on orders from a command center in Hainan. AP-8 Poseidon recorded the incident, capturing thermal images of the Chinese engine. They knew with complete certainty that the action was state-directed. Yet for 14 hours, the US government stayed silent. Behind the scenes, officials debated what to do. If the US agreed with Manila and called it deliberate aggression, they would be committing to it. For 14 hours, the US government stayed silent as officials considered their response. Agreeing with Manila and labeling the incident deliberate aggression risked committing to military action and heightening tensions. American forces could be drawn into conflict over a deteriorating ship, a scenario they hoped to avoid. The State Department eventually issued a carefully worded statement at 2 a.m., calling the incident unsafe and provocative, and reaffirming its ironclad commitment, while steering clear of the term deliberate. While unsafe sounds serious to most, analysts saw it as signaling that the US did not want to invoke the treaty, preferring to keep the situation in the gray zone for diplomatic management rather than military action. Maneuvering. They knew the Philippines was correct and that it was a ramming, but in public, they acted as if it were an accident to avoid their treaty obligations. The appearance of cohesion between the allies was completely broken. Secretary of the National Defense. The air in that room must have been freezing. She had two choices, and both of them were dangerous. If she stuck to the unsafe script, she would confirm to Manila and more importantly to Beijing that the American security guarantee was a paper tiger. She would be telling China that as long as they use fishing boats to ram allies, America will look the other way. But if she used the word deliberate, she was walking toward a cliff. She was giving Manila the green light to escalate, potentially dragging the US into a shooting war over a coral reef. After 2 hours and 40 minutes, a joint statement was released. The US finally used the word deliberate. This restored some credibility, but it came at the cost of losing ambiguity. The supplies were delivered, the damage to the alliance was lasting. China now understands where the alliance is vulnerable. They have observed the pattern: cautious language, a leak, and a reluctant admission of the truth. Ruth, there is a deeper level to this. There is more to this story. In the months after the incident, the Philippines began rapidly building its own radar networks and maritime awareness systems. Privately, officials have said they no longer want to rely on US intelligence to monitor their own waters. They understood that sharing intelligence does not guarantee shared interpretation. When the stakes are high, the stronger partner's view will reflect its own interests. This growing separation in intelligence sharing across the First Island chain presents an opportunity for decision makers and analysts alike. The growing mistrust could prompt allies to duplicate intelligence assets, causing costly redundancy and potential information gaps. It may also increase the chance of uncoordinated responses during upcoming incidents, raising the risk of escalation or miscalculation. Yet this moment also provides opportunities for adaptation. The alliance could invest in new frameworks for intelligence sharing and joint interpretation, build mechanisms for faster policy coordination after incidents, and support the Philippines in building independent intelligence capabilities while continuing operational interoperability. Ultimately, how these actors choose to adapt, whether by reform, renewed commitment, or further drift, will shape the security architecture of the South China Sea for years to come. Consider the crew on the bridge of the Magbanua. When they saw the White Hull approaching, their focus was on survival, not on diplomatic language. For them, the gray zone is not a theory. It is a reality where they endure hardship for their country while allies debate how to describe their situation. The Sierra Madre remains in place. It continues to rust and sink. Each day, it gets closer to being lost, and the question of what will happen when ambiguity ends becomes urgent. China waits, and the ocean slowly takes over. The key issue is whether an ironclad promise is worth the risk of war over a deteriorating ship. Watch the frequency of the resupply missions over the next 18 months. If the Philippine Navy starts escorting every single boat, it means Manila has decided that managing escalation is a luxury it can no longer afford. Watch the radar procurement. If they stop asking for American data, it means the trust has already moved on. These are not just passing details, they are critical signals. More frequent naval escorts point to diminished confidence in deterrence and a preparedness to risk a crisis, raising the odds of miscalculation or swift escalation. Independent intelligence efforts reveal deteriorating trust among allies, exposing gaps that adversaries can exploit. For analysts and decision makers, these observable changes are early warning indicators that the alliance is entering a more vulnerable, less predictable phase. The world is watching the video, and everyone is reaching their own conclusions. But in the South China Sea, the only conclusion that matters is the one that happens when the last piece of rusted steel finally hits the ocean floor. The video was 11 minutes and 43 seconds long, yet the quiet that followed it might last for generations. As you watch the horizon of the South China Sea, don't look for the missiles. Look for the white hulls. Look for the course corrections. And most importantly, listen for the words that aren't being said. Because in the gray zone, the loudest thing in the world is the muteness of an ally who knows the truth but isn't willing to face it. The clock is ticking, and the ocean never stops eating the steel.